Welcome back to another episode of The Last Zebra. I'm your host, Ugo Ezema. As always, please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment. We have episodes that come out every Monday, everywhere on your podcast platforms, and on Tuesdays on YouTube. And without further ado, my next guest, Dr. Norman Lee, friend, colleague. Welcome to the show.
It's good to be here.
Thanks for coming by. I really appreciate you.
Well, like I said before, you call me, I'm here. I feel like most of us who you have called, we're on that kind of a basis. If you want us here, we will come here and we will talk.
I appreciate you. Now, you and I met when I was a resident at Ochsner, if I'm not mistaken.
That is very true.
And you were a medical student.
I was an intern.
I
was a first year. You were a second year.
That's right.
We were in the ICU briefly.
That's right. Tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get to here?
So that's a interesting question. I would say initially I had no plans on being here. I just ended up here through sheer whim. And
here being New Orleans, or here being like in totality who you are today?
I would say mostly of New Orleans,
Okay.
but a little bit of just meandering my way through life, figuring out what I want. Initially, I'm from New York. My parents were immigrants from China. They came here in the 70s, set up shop, had some kids. I'm the youngest of three. And I was, for the most part, in New York for my entire life. And didn't really move. I lived in the same house until I was about 24. At that point, I went to college at Stony Brook. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to do teaching. I really enjoyed teaching. I really enjoyed at least talking to people and giving them information, having them learn things. And I geared a lot of my life towards that. I did a lot of TAing and did a lot of public speaking. I actually had a radio show.
Oh,
Yeah. I did radio for 4 years. I wasn't really much of a speaker because we actually did a lot of the radio in Chinese.
oh,
So what you see right now is not what I was doing, but it gave me a good background to figuring out how to do things, how to speak in a decent cadence, and understand when to interrupt and not interrupt people.
Right.
Which, funny enough, I think I would just say this now, COVID destroyed all of that, because once Zoom came out, you just forgot when to speak and when not to speak. But I digress. So I was there. I graduated, and I had a couple of health issues that I was dealing with, and I wanted to take care of that. And through that, I kind of found medicine. Because I realized that if you could teach someone about their health and teach someone how to get better in their health, then you have a means of doing that right. So initially, I was in the sciences, wanting to teach science, but then that kind of geared towards medicine, did some work in nutrition, and then eventually applied to medical school, where I had not much of a choice of where I wanted to go, but I had opportunities open up. I think that's the best way to put it. A lot of us aren't always blessed with all the choices, but we have opportunities.
That's right.
And when those opportunities arise, you either take it or you don't.
right.
My opportunity was leave home, travel across to the complete opposite side of the world, and go to Australia. And never having left home, never having done any of this, I decided, why not? And in that mind frame, I thought of my parents, who also did the same thing in their 20s, leaving home, or what they thought was home, packing everything up, starting anew in a different location. And at least for me, I didn't know it was a permanent thing. It was only for 2 years. So
Right.
I went to Australia for 2 years, went to medical school there, did my preclinical work, which is essentially lectures, anatomy, and all like the boring stuff.
Yeah, right.
The stuff that you don't really do medicine for, but
Right.
you gain that background to learn medicine. And it kind of started like that. And the deal was, for that program, you do 2 years in Australia in a city called Brisbane. It's the third largest city there. It's a nice city. I always say, if you kind of imagine where it is in America, it's kind of like Atlanta. It's not Atlanta, but like if you superimpose the United States there, and I'm probably very wrong about this, but that's what I think. But going there for 2 years, embracing their culture, learning medicine, a lot of work. And then after that, I had to go to another city that I've never been to called New Orleans. And I just moved there. And in my mind, if I could survive 2 years completely away from my family, where honestly the best time to talk to them is a 1 hour window on like Saturday or Sunday Like my Saturday night is their Sunday morning.
Right.
The only time I could talk to anyone and then just be 3 hours by flight away from home, I could do anything. So I went there, came back, and I finished medical school here. Funny enough, I thought being in New Orleans was a bigger culture shock than being in Australia.
How so?
It's because you expect when you're that far that things will be different. But you don't expect when you're that close that things can be that different. And it's one of those things where a lot of the times people always say that Americans don't know geography. Americans don't know anything. Like
Right.
the truth is our country is so large that you can go to a different state or a different city and everything is completely different. And
Right.
especially in New Orleans where it was, I like to think of it like a microcosm of another culture that evolved in America, that it is extremely different. So that to me was a culture shock. I couldn't accept that this existed in the same country.
Yeah, New Orleans. It's. I've said this several times on the show. New Orleans is one of my. It's my favorite city in the United States, bar none. My favorite city in the United States. It is so unique from every other city that's here. It's un-American. It's fundamentally an un-American city. It's so different in so many different ways. And in terms of like culture, it really is a culture shock from what any typical American would be. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Having lived also during medical school, having lived in Chicago, Baltimore, New York, bigger cities, yeah, there's nowhere like here.
I think that you said something interesting that I really like, because I actually think that out of all the things that is American, New Orleans is very American in the fact that it evolved out of other institutions and cultures and conglomerates and became something that is pure to America.
Wow. Okay. I like that.
Now, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying I'm right. But the way I see it, if anyone asks me what's American food and they say, oh, you can't say barbecue, you can't say this, I say, go to New Orleans. That is American food. Because I guarantee you no one else will have it and you will absolutely love it.
That's right.
Yeah.
The gumbo is uniquely New Orleans, which is uniquely American. That is, I like it. I like it. So perhaps New Orleans is the most American city then.
I like to think so. It is one of the most American places that there is.
That's an excellent point. And it really is, because America really is a melting pot, and New Orleans embodies that wholeheartedly in every facet of its existence. So many different kinds of people here, and many cities can say that, but it's somehow different here. Where in New York? Queens, Brooklyn.
Queens. So, yeah, born and raised in Queens. It was initially in Flushing, Queens, but not the part of Flushing that everyone associates of Flushing. So I had to travel to the Asian area of Flushing, and I did grow up there. I grew up there when I was young. I had to take a bus there. It was a 30-minute bus ride. But primarily I lived in Kew Garden Hills, which is actually it was a lot of immigrants, a lot of Jews, and in between that, different socioeconomic status people. And it was an interesting place because you learned a lot, and it was safe, but also sometimes not so safe, but not in a bad way, but in enough to kind of let you know that this is how you should grow up and this is how you can grow up well. And I didn't find it that bad. I thought it was fun. I hadn't made a lot of friends, didn't really make enemies because everyone was nice. And overall, I thought it was a great experience. Something that I do want to go back to eventually. I do plan on going back to around the area, not necessarily in that place. It's very expensive nowadays.
I can imagine.
But I'm thinking about moving back around my home and just kind of be around my family a little bit more.
Anybody in your family that's in medicine aside from you?
I am the first physician in my family to do medicine. Now, I'm not the first doctor because I think everyone says my uncle was a veterinarian, so he technically gets that right. But I am the first one that treats people.
Shout out to veterinarians.
Oh yeah, they're doctors too, and they do a great job.
They do a fantastic job. How old were you when then you decided, all right, I think I want to go to medical school? It sounds like you had a lot of experience just in life prior to. Not many people get that amount of experience before they go into medical school. In fact, I would say most people kind of do what is now the traditional track, which is high school, undergrad in the United States, high school, undergrad, medical school, and so on and so forth. How old were you when you made that decision? And I know you mentioned there was a health issue that led to that decision, but how old were you?
I would say I initially thought about it heavily starting my freshman year of college, but it wasn't fully committed. Because at that point, everyone knows if you think about it, you have to commit because your GPA is on the line, your MCAT's on the line, you got to take all your courses. But I really thought I had a good shot by junior year completing all the prerequisites. And then it was at that point I thought, I think I could do this. I've committed this much effort. I'm willing to commit that effort again to fulfilling that. And of course, as you mentioned, I am not the traditional graduate. I took a couple of years off. I actually did teaching for my first year after I graduated, and I felt that was very fulfilling. I didn't teach. I actually taught a hodgepodge of things. It was mostly private tutoring, but I taught English and math. And it's amazing what you can do just by giving someone time and effort. And even with like topics such as math, where people didn't think they had it in them, but if you teach them just basic logic, give them the right amount of experience, it's amazing how far they can grow, where they were initially a C student and then they became an A+ student in the span of hours. And I remember one person that I just kept teaching just basic like math to, and she was like in her 8th grade, but literally she learned the entire year's curriculum. And I was like, wow, you are really smart. Wow. You are incredibly smart. You just needed someone to just show you this one thing, and then you flew on your own. And then at that point, we went to the next year's curriculum and just kept on working on the next year's from there.
Would you say that throughout your career then in medicine thus far, that you've been able to kind of hone in on that? Because it sounds like teaching is a passion. It's something that you care deeply about. Have you been able to? I know the answer to this just because we train together. But do you feel like you've been able to impart part of that passion into your practice of medicine and as part of your training, of course?
I would say very much so. And not in the traditional sense of me teaching someone else something, but I feel as a physician, our goal is to enlighten patients and educate them and guide them in certain ways. And a lot of the time, these are positive things, but especially in our field, these are a lot of negative things. And it's learning certain tricks, learning certain things to optimize the way I can deliver information to someone in a stressful time where they can make a successful and educated opinion and decision on their healthcare. And I think to me, that is the most valuable thing that I've at least tried to learn. And it is one of the things that I pride myself in being able to accomplish, not always successfully at times, but it is one of the things that I enjoy doing, is to find a way to communicate effectively, appropriately, and positively to achieve a good outcome.
Let's dive into that a little bit. What do you think is the key factor to be able to do that? I think so. If an intern was to come to you and say, "Hey, Dr. Lee, I'm having a hard time communicating efficiently with my patients," what are some key things one key thing that you would say, just dialing on this and focus on this first, or something to that effect? What do you think is the key part of communicating with patients and your colleagues as well, in order to impart information efficiently and at the same time have them well informed?
I would say the first and most important thing, and I think you may agree with me on this, it's just listening. The first part of getting or relaying information is understanding where someone's coming from. And obtaining that information, whether to get their history or just getting their input on certain things or how they feel about how things are going, I think that's an important thing. And a lot of the times it's just not speaking. It's looking at them, showing other signs that you are there and acknowledging them without necessarily speaking, to give them the time to adequately voice their opinion. To me, that is always one of the habits that I've tried to optimize. And, everyone has different studies saying you should sit down, you should do this, you should do that, you should show empathy. But a lot of the times it's just understanding and listening. So if you have an open ear, you give them your undivided attention, you just sit at eye level with them and just have a frank conversation. Don't even think that you're talking to like a patient from that position, but just talking to someone, just giving them your input, because I feel like the minute they see that and feel that, then they know they're willing. I feel like they are willing to give me more information, give me more thought, and then I'm willing to at least go with them in that regard.
Gotcha. I wanted to dial in a little bit on earlier. You had mentioned when you went to college, went to undergrad, you started shifting towards medicine really after your freshman year. What did you go into undergrad for? Was it education?
Initially, I really didn't know.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair.
I applied to computer sciences and I didn't get in. So then I went to the general route of basic sciences, and I thought, things that I enjoyed biology. I enjoyed a little bit of chemistry, and I thought what if I just became a high school teacher? That wouldn't be too bad. Granted, at the time, it wasn't as bad as it is now for education. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But at that point, it was still an appealing thing. It's like if I taught high school biology, I'd be happy. If I taught all that, then, as long as I'm happy, that's all that really mattered. Right. I started off in that, did TA work there, thought it was very fulfilling. A lot of commitment, though. You spent like hours and hours of just doing TA hours. We're just sitting there, and people, came at you for various reasons. Sometimes they really didn't know what they were doing and they wanted help. And sometimes they just wanted you to do their homework. You did whatever, but you just went through the motions. And for the ones that meant it and the ones that enjoyed it, that's where you find your fulfillment. That's where I found my fulfillment.
That's awesome. TA being teaching assistant.
Yep.
Teaching assistant. So when you went to Australia, granted, it wasn't as much of a culture shock compared to here. What were the most unique aspects of living in Australia? One, as a medical student, because there is that pressure, and of course, you had the pressure of being away from home, and to actually have that in your mind that you're literally on the opposite side of the world. What aspects of Australia were you like, this is truly amazing? I've said this before, I am terrified of that country. I feel like everything there is designed, in terms of nature, designed to eliminate human beings. I don't know if that's different in the cities, because I've seen videos. I'm scared of snakes. I'll happily admit that. And I've seen videos of snakes in the wildest places. And I'm saying wild as a description here. I'm talking like in people's house, roofs and stuff like that, of videos in Australia. What was the wildest thing that you were able to see while you were there? But what was also the most endearing and fulfilling thing about Australia for you?
So I would say the things that I felt were instantly odd, that I felt just out of normal. One, seasons. It's complete opposite side of the world. So our winter is their summer. And with that respect, their educational cycle begins in January and goes for an entire calendar year, ends in like November, December, which makes sense instead of being in July to June.
Right.
So that was a bit odd. Seeing people drive on the opposite side of the road was odd. Having to learn how to cross the street again because you don't know if people are going to hit you. Very odd feeling. I am not one with nature. I don't enjoy it as much as other people, not to say. So it was very easily done for me to avoid death. So were there large bugs? Yes. Were there normal things such as like bed bugs that exist? Yeah, and that sucked too. That was the most dangerous thing I had to deal with, was bed bugs, which is very tame in retrospect. No giant deadly spiders, no things that are going to kill me, but bed bugs are horrible. And just to learn the entire process on how to eliminate bed bugs and still live in an apartment that has them was just mind-boggling and very, very nerve-wracking for me. My roommate was like, he's like, I've been through this before and I hate it. I don't want to go through this again. And I just noticed that this was the most aggravated I'd ever seen this guy. And I was like, I have no idea what's going on. And then throughout the next few months, I'm like, this sucks. I never want to do this again. The most interesting thing, though, there was this one time where we had to do this. Just the best way I would describe it is an appreciation of the Aboriginal culture, in which we had to go to an island. And it wasn't a very desolate island, but it had like hotel rooms and all that, but it wasn't a very populated one, and it was Aboriginal, so there was a lot of native Australians there. And learning about their health issues, learning about that was also, to me, interesting because that was, again, the most nature that I've done, because you're literally out in an island. You had to take a boat there, and there's not much.
Right.
There's no big lights. You look out the night sky, all you see is stars. And especially in the southern hemisphere, you see a lot. You see a whole new constellation of things. So to me, that was the most interesting. We had a whole bonfire. We were like happy. We were sitting down, singing. So that to me was fun. But beyond that, I don't venture out very much.
I went to a Caribbean medical school, St. Matthew's University in the Grand Cayman, in the Cayman Islands. And the general population were either Americans or Canadians, and then other nationalities sprinkled in there. And I don't recall in the entirety of my time there actually meeting a Caymanian, someone from Cayman, in my school, based in Cayman. I'm curious about how that was in Australia, because I assume the school that you went to is a U.S.-based international medical school. I don't know if that's a fair assessment. Am I thinking of it in the right way, the way I'm thinking about Caribbean medical school?
I would say it is an Australian institution that had opened up spots for an American cohort.
Gotcha. Yeah. So there were a lot of Australian classmates.
Yeah, the majority were Australians doing their general medical degree, which is actually part undergrad, where they do 2 to 3 years undergrad and they do 4 years of medical. And that was the majority of the cohort. We were just a subset of that cohort, as in similar ways that the Canadian cohort was also a subset. I think the best way to describe it, it's less like the Caribbean medical schools and more like Duke and US in Singapore, or like Ben Gurion, where it is a school in that location that accepts American cohorts. And, hilariously, one of the questions that I always feel like gets asked is, well, why didn't you consider the Caribbean? And I said, I did. But for the same exact reason that I mentioned before, I don't do well with nature.
That's fair.
That I just couldn't do it. Like to be in an area where like my power runs out, I just couldn't survive. So I said, I cannot do that. I think I will just physically not tolerate that. So to take that out of the equation, I'd rather just go to the opposite side of the world.
Wow. What was their, do they have residency as well? Because I don't know much about that type of medical training, right? So we're used to, again, the flow of medicine, like I said, undergrad, med school, residency, fellowship if you want to go down that route, and more fellowships if you want to go, continue hurting yourself. But is that the same route that Australian students did, and did they have an option to come here for residency?
That's actually a good question. I would say, at least to what's described to me, it's very similar to the British system, in which they complete their medical schooling and then they become house officers, in which they do a variety of rotations for 1 to 3 years, I believe. And after that 3-year training period, then they apply again into a specialty. And that could be internal medicine, that could be pediatrics, surgery. And then they start doing their training in that regard. Gotcha. I would say overall, because they start earlier, their training is a little bit more prolonged, because one, they have work hours. I think they don't really go as far as we do.
Right.
But with that, it's, if you average everything out, they kind of finish around the same time. They do get paid more.
They do?
I do believe so, at least compared to us in Louisiana. Maybe not compared to New York, but the at least for the time that they spend there, it's pretty well paid. And I do believe they also make overtime, but it's just more applications, more applying, and that's that. But it's not a bad situation. It's you get at least get a couple of years to determine what you want, and then after that apply to your subspecialty. I do think it's funny that in comparison to some of the people that I've graduated with, that I may have finished my end goal maybe a year or two earlier than them, but in the end they're going to get there anyway. They're not too far behind. Right. And to answer the question, if they can come here, it's as long as they do the prerequisites, they have every reason to come here.
Gotcha.
And I do know that there are people, especially those who have found significant others that want to practice in the United States that were natively Australian. They would sit the steps and they would still get the ECFMG certification and then apply here as an international medical graduate.
Nice.
Or foreign medical graduate.
FMG.
Yeah.
Yeah, FMG. How did you choose internal medicine? So I will start by saying you are a pulmonary critical care.
Yes.
Pulmonologist, intensivist. So to do that, again, I've rehashed this before, but after you do internal medicine and then you do a fellowship of pulmonary and critical care. How did you choose internal medicine?
So first of all, I want to start by saying happy match day.
Oh, yeah.
Now that I realize this is match day. Everyone who matched internal medicine, you will love it.
I will say this. I never do this, but I'll give a shout out. My cousin Shaq, his name is Shaq, matched to Tulane, as internal medicine resident.
Well,
I guess intern. He'll be an intern, so he'll be starting a couple months. Shout out to Shaq.
Oh, shout out to
Congrats,
Shaq.
Man. And shout out to everyone that matched, for real.
Yeah, considering that Tulane starts a little bit early, I think in June, I may get to meet him. So
I hope you do.
Yeah.
His name is Shaq. It's going to be hard to. It's going to be hard to not know an intern named Shaq.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress. I apologize.
That's okay. But yeah, internal medicine. I originally came into medical school thinking I wanted to do psychiatry.
Me too. Huh.
Which is kind of like the same principle that I just really wanted to talk to people. I wanted to avoid blood. I wanted to avoid poking people. I wanted to avoid all that.
Now you're an intensivist.
I know. It just works in weird ways. I think the most interesting thing is I enjoy thinking. I enjoy the cerebral aspect of medicine. I enjoy parts of the physical aspect of medicine, but to a point where I don't want to do surgery, but if I need to, I can.
Right.
And I just value the thought process more than anything. And I think that to me is very internal medicine, in which you enjoy getting the history, you enjoy getting the information, you enjoy building up the story, and then ordering certain lab investigations, etc., to support your story to find an answer. And sometimes it could be a very simple answer, or sometimes it's a very exotic answer and you pat yourself on the back. But I enjoy that. Even if it's the simple
zebras.
one or the zebra. And I love zebras. Everyone loves zebras. Yeah. But because of that, I went into internal medicine, and especially in pulmonary and critical care, everyone goes in for critical care. At least 95%. The 5% that go in for pulmonary, shout out to you. But that was not me. I enjoyed critical care because it was just medicine. It was medicine, quick medicine, quick thinking, sometimes getting your hands dirty. And at that point, I didn't hate getting my hands dirty. And I didn't hate all the work. I didn't hate the sadness. I didn't hate the happiness, because I would say there is more sadness than happiness, but the happiness is great. Getting through the sadness and helping others get through the sadness, I think, is the rewarding part. But because of that, I think I drove in on my second year. I was just going to work a little earlier because there was more patients on the list that I needed to get through. And I just thought, I don't hate this. I actually like this. Maybe I need to do this. And at that point, I didn't want to do it. It just naturally came that way, like a lot of things that I've done. And at that point, once I've realized at that junction I needed to do it, I was like, great, now I got to switch everything over again, change the application, and just gear myself towards this.
I feel the exact same way. I will say I wanted to be a psychiatrist. going into medical school. I before I went to medical school, I worked in the psych ward, and part of what I enjoy, I guess that's what I'm doing now. You know, I kind of manifested that aspect of what I really enjoy. I like hearing people talk. I love to figure out why people do the things they do. Even now, I do, and that's kind of the ethos behind this podcast too. Is to kind of get behind the stories behind the people that work in healthcare. But during medical school, having gone through all the rotations, I have always, one of my core things in life is it's just as important. And another guest of mine, Caitlin Bacon, she said this as well. It's just as important to know what you don't want, right? Because then even if you don't know what you want, you know that, you know, just narrowing it down to what you don't want is a big enough step and can punch you in the right direction. So internal medicine bought me more time, right? Mm-hmm. There's so many options in internal medicine. I knew I didn't want to do, there are a lot of things I liked, but I knew I didn't want to do it in terms of whether it be by lifestyle or by I didn't feel challenged enough by it or for whatever reason. But internal medicine gave me more time. And you're right. The ICU is just, oh my goodness. Everyone is attracted to the ICU. I actually think that a few decades ago, this is my theory, that a group of pulmonologists realized that they weren't getting a lot of pulmonologists. A cabal of lung doctors got together and were like, yo, we need to tie pulmonology to something because we're not getting enough. And that's how PulmCrit started. That's my theory. I have no proof. I have no evidence of this. I just know that's what happened. But in any case, it started with a love and fascination of the ICU, pure medicine, like you said. And pulmonary came after that. I started loving pulm in fellowship, and now as an attending, I have a much deeper appreciation for pulmonary. I think you see so much of people. In the ICU, you don't get the chance to see people. As a pulmonologist, you get to see people, right? Because it's mostly clinic work, and I'm sure that applies to many other specialties that, you know, that work in a clinic. Do you feel like you are getting some sort of affinity towards pulmonary, or are you still primarily, in terms of attraction, an intensivist?
I would say just based off my current job, I self-selected myself to the ICU in being intensivist, but that's not to say I don't enjoy pulmonary.
Right.
Because I still get my time doing pulmonary consults, and that to me it's a little more scary in the ICU because
Pulmonary consults.
Yeah, pulmonary diseases in itself is more frightening to me than the ICU.
It's nebulous.
It's nebulous. You don't know what you're really doing. Sometimes to get the answer is too invasive, and sometimes you just say, let's just see what happens with steroids. Mm-hmm. You give steroids and like, oh, you got better. Like, great.
That's right. Yeah. Pulmonary, I find pulmonary is very, very nebulous. It's it has a lot of art in it, a lot of preference. So, you know, provider preference is a thing in pulmonary. I think it's this, so I'll try this. And it's probably the one that is most dependent on experience compared to the ICU. The ICU is very structured. The ICU, you have, if you hear something, if you hear shock, you know what you need to do. If you hear infection, you know what you need to do. If you hear respiratory failure, you know what you need to do. There isn't as much leeway, and really the joy of thinking in the ICU doesn't come, it's not on the first day, it's the second day onwards, where you can deliberate on why things are happening. But it's action first, you know, and thoughts after the fact. Mm-hmm. And I think comparing that to pulmonary, I've always thought that they're two sides of two sides of the same coin. Like, and it requires different type of brain to be a pulmonologist than it is to be an intensivist. Because like I said, pulmonary is so much more art. And I learn every day in my pulmonary clinic. Every day I'm like, oh. Every day I'm like, oh, I could try that. And it works for this person, but it didn't work for this person. So let's let's figure out what's best for this particular patient. So I've now developed a very deep and profound appreciation for pulmonary and pulmonologists and people that love pulmonary. They always do. Like, we have a lot of I love our mentors who are subspecialties, and the way they talk about their subspecialties, cystic fibrosis, IPF. You have to have some sort of passion for that topic and for the patients for you to be able to go through that. What's next for you? What do you feel is the next stage, next step?
So this is the most interesting time in my life where, for the most part, I always felt like I was chasing a goal, like an academic goal, achieve this, keep going here. And now is the first time where I'm really feeling maybe I just want to do what's best for my family and for me. And I don't know if at this point if those two goals are the same, and to me, that's okay, where I don't really need to be a teacher in the sense of being a teacher to students. I could just practice medicine. And I'm okay with that. Like, I'm happy to give up all these other things and just practice medicine, go home, and see my kids. And that to me is like, I don't have kids yet, but now that I'm there, that is what I want. And I don't want to not be there. And I don't want my job to take me away too much. Because I know it will take me away. I picked it. That's going to happen.
Right.
But not too much. And I feel now that if it's going into a little bit of a private-ish kind of world, then that's what it's going to be, where I will do just general pulmonary. And I would love to do general pulmonary, do inpatient consults in ICU, and just do the whole gamut of things. And from time to time, just go back and forth.
Outside of work, outside of being a pulmonologist and intensivist, what are your hobbies? What do you like to do?
The things that drive me.
Yes.
1, shoes. I am a sneakerhead. As you know, I collect sneakers. I don't buy them all the time.
What are you wearing currently?
I am wearing my All Red Air Force Ones, which is one of my favorite ones. I've been looking for them for the past 3 years. I can never find them in my size. And sometimes they were like, if you go to Champs here, you will find them. And I refused because I wanted them on sale. I wanted them on a deal. And it took me Black Friday of last year. I finally got them, and I can't get them off my feet. I wear them like once a week.
Do you have because there are a couple apps for sneaker aficionados like yourself. Do you have all those apps?
I have some of them. Because the more I have, the more I will buy. So I've limited myself. And I'm doing good. I've actually haven't bought a pair this year, as in this calendar year. And I've made 3 months, and that's good. Because, I'm going to have to move eventually. I don't want to spend that much money. And also moving all those shoes is going to be hard.
Yeah.
So I haven't done that yet. But I've been taking a little break from that. I actually have gone on vacation for the first time in years.
Where did y'all go?
Me and my wife, we took 2 separate vacations, and they're both to the same place but different. So in January, I went to Disney World. Orlando. And this past month, I went to Universal.
Also Orlando.
Because
Preference?
That's a tough question. Let's see what next year shows. I would say for now it's Disney, but also the experience was different. And I'll tell you why. I went all out because I never got to go to Disney as a child. But to go to Disney as an adult with income is a completely different experience.
It's a level to it.
It's a level to it. And it's great because I don't have kids. They're not going to encumber me, and I don't have to do whatever they want. But I can stay up till 12 to get my Genie Plus. I can wake up at 7 to book my lightning lanes. And I can plan my entire day along that and just do everything. And it was exhausting. I did 4 days of that. I was sore. I had like 30,000 steps a day, 13 miles a day walking, but it was fun. And then I got to eat at all the expensive places because, again, income.
Right.
I could eat at like a Be Our Guest. I could eat at Cinderella's Table. And I did. And I thought it was great. it was just so expensive.
I believe it. I have a standing belief that until this is not a popular, this is an unpopular opinion. I don't think you should bring your kids to Disney World until they can, fend for themselves.
For sure.
Because it's Disney World or any, because I love theme parks. Let me just, say that outright. I love theme parks. My wife brought me to my very first theme park here in the United States, Six Flags, many, many years ago. Mm-hmm. And oh my goodness. It was in Six Flags, and I want to say it must have been Dallas.
Oh, like Magic Mountain or something, that one?
Oh,
yeah.
I absolutely lost my mind. I'm convinced that no matter how old I get, theme parks will always blow my mind. Mm-hmm. I did not go to Universal or Disney until I was an adult. So I was in residency, if I'm not mistaken, when I went to Universal for the first time. Can I tell you? It was the most, and I knew I would be selfish about that experience once I had it. I was like, no, I cannot share this with my kids until they can do their own thing, because they're going to damper this experience. They're going to mess this up for me. Mm-hmm. I want to have a good time at Disney World. I want to have a blast at Universal. And the most memorable thing for me was Harry Potter World at Universal. Oh my goodness. I have no words. But my unpopular opinion is until my kids can fend for themselves, like, all right, you two, you guys go and sort yourselves out. Here are your tickets. Have a blast. Mm-hmm. Daddy's gone. Daddy's going to have a blast himself. Yeah. Until they're not coming with me.
Just AirTag them.
Or get them a watch or something. But I was like, you guys have a blast. I am going to also have a blast. I don't want to, carry you when you get tired. I don't want to do any of that, because I'm here to have a good time too. Mm-hmm. If you bring your kids anywhere, that's a trip. If you don't bring your kids, it's a vacation. There's a difference. There's a difference. It's subtle. There's a difference. You're just bringing home with you. If you bring your kids somewhere, you're just doing what you're doing at home, somewhere you paid money for. You might as well just stay home and do the exact same thing. But yeah, love Universal. Mm-hmm. I haven't done Disney the way I want to do it, but that's definitely on the list. How does one become a shoe aficionado?
Oh, so
How did you become a shoe aficionado?
One of the many jobs that I've had in my life, it was initially back in high school. I got a summer job at a sporting goods store, and they put me in the shoe department. At that point, I had no idea what shoes were, and I would ask the dumbest questions, like, what is this Hirachis? Like I would just ask stupid questions like that. Like, what are Air Force Ones? Like, isn't that a plane? And then eventually you learn the lingo, you learn everything, and then you learn, oh, that's a really nice shoe. Oh, I get a discount. Let me buy some shoes. And then you just keep buying shoes, and then you like shoes, and it just keeps going more and more and more.
What do you like about shoes? What is it about shoes? Because are you doing it as a collector in a sense? Is it a thing that you enjoy to collect, or is it a thing that you like to wear, the way I like to wear, I don't know, like a certain shirt or something like that? What is it? Or is it both?
I am more of a wearer than a collector.
Gotcha.
So I enjoy wearing different types of shoes and different color shoes, only because for the most part, my work uniform is the same. Yeah. It's sometimes other people get different colored things. There's figs, Janu, all these things. I prefer the traditional, whatever the hospital gives you.
Just take that.
And just wear the sneaker.
Yeah.
And that to me is a way of just expressing myself in different ways. And that's why I liked it. And hilariously, I can't remember his name, but there is another pulmonary and critical care physician he was on YouTube, and there was like a day in the life of, and I was like, I want to watch this.
I wonder if it's Cedric. Is it Cedric?
Cedric. And I don't know if you watched it too, but you see him go work out in the morning. I'm like, that's pretty cool. I've done that. Yeah. And then he goes home and says, what am I going to wear today? And then you see his shoe closet, and I go, oh my goodness, I'm exactly like him. That is what I am. And I think this is why I picked the right field, because in the end, I do the same thing. Sometimes, like in the early day, I would go work out, and then I come back like, what am I going to wear today? I'm like, let's go to wear these today. I like them.
I don't know Cedric, but shout out to Cedric. Yeah, I've seen that video. He has some really cool videos. He does a few day in our lives, and he has tremendous insight. But yeah, I know that. I think that was the first video of his that I actually became aware of. And he has a enormous shoe closet, if I remember correctly.
Oh yeah, it's the size of this room, if anything.
Yeah. Do you think, are there shoes that you're like, you know what, is there any shoe that you would get and you'd say I wouldn't wear it, I would not wear it because it is a truly collector's item? Are there any shoes you can think in your mind, you're like, this is a rare shoe for whatever reason?
I always had in my mind, if I ended up with any of the Off-White Jordan 1s, I would never wear those, because that to me is art. That's not a shoe, that is art. I've never been able to get one, and I don't think I will. I have a buddy who got one, and he keeps it in like a case. And I would do the exact same thing, because that shoe is art at this point. I would not wear those, but I would love to get one.
Why? Where does one even find that? Is it the same apps that?
Yeah, like when
it just has to be available.
Yeah, when they used to drop at the time, you would be able to get them. But again, rest in peace
to what was it, Virgil?
Yeah.
Virgil Abloh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would assume now it's even harder to obtain those.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Anything else? So shoes. You've gotten into vacationing.
Mm-hmm. And of course, as you mentioned, Harry Potter World. I'm wearing my Ravenclaw sweatshirt.
That's right.
I got the whole experience there. I got my whole my robes, went on every rides and all that. Other things I do right now is I play video games. I still get back into video games. It's one of the things that I enjoy that takes my mind off things. And I play a bunch of things, but right now it's just a lot of either single player stuff and a little bit of cooperative things with friends, not in a angry, malicious way, but just it's a way that I can catch up with a group of people and all that. And, when I have time, I try to work out a lot. I try to do cardio. I've enjoyed cardio a significant portion of my life, at least in the past 20 years. And when I do get the chance, I go.
Is it marathon cardio or steady, treadmill cardio?
I do steady treadmill. Sometimes I go outdoors, but at least every time I do it, I just say, I'm going to do this for an hour. And I just do whatever for an hour. And that to me that's my workout, because I can always commit an hour. My
guy Matt here is a marathon runner. He just finished one.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And he's trying to get me to do the Crescent City Classic. Yeah. And I think my wife wants to do it too. So, but I am not a fan of marathons. Although every time I have run long enough, the runner's high is a real thing. It's something that I don't know if there's anyone that doesn't enjoy it. But I get bored just running on a treadmill. So I don't know how to zone out when I'm running on a treadmill. I just get bored and I'm like, I'll get off. The same thing with the stair climber. So I can only ever do like 10 minutes on a stair climber. So if I was to run, I would probably have to do it outside. If you couldn't do, say, pump crit in medicine, if you couldn't do pump crit, would you do psychiatry now?
I don't know if I would do psychiatry.
Why not?
I still don't think I have the aptitude and the patience for it. Because the other thing that I've learned that the reason why we choose pulmonary and critical care is we have a degree of impatience. We have a degree of impatience, and we also have a short attention span. We have an intense attention span, but we also get bored very quickly.
And psychiatry is, which it doesn't, it sounds, because there's a part of you that is very patient, and that's the educator part. Why do you feel like that wouldn't translate in psychiatry? That it's a different kind of patience, maybe? I
think it's a different kind of patience, and I don't know if I particularly have that type, because the way I see it, if I do take care of someone, and the longer I see them, even in the outpatient setting, I'm not seeing a patient anymore. I'm seeing someone we're just meeting up. And that's the best part about medicine is I could do that. I don't think I get that opportunity in psychiatry.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. Because, wow, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Because you never get to, I don't know if that's true. I probably have to talk to a psychiatrist, but from the rotations that I had, although to be fair, we didn't have we didn't have our patients for that long to be able to kind of see what that end that end result is. Because I did psychiatry for 6 weeks, maybe 8, in medical school. So all the patients we saw were going through stuff actively, and there wasn't a wide spectrum of progress, respectfully for in psychiatry.
It's tough.
It's really, really tough. I wonder if I'd have to get someone that's a psychiatrist to talk to them here and see if we can figure out what first of all, what kind of patience is it that's required to be a psychiatrist, and then secondly is what's that end process like? Like, are people healed in psychiatry? I don't know if that's a fair statement.
Mm-hmm. Like, I'm sure they get better, but
right.
The reason I always feel like if you're going to have your appointment slot that long, you must be doing a lot.
Yeah. And a lot of it is really just talking and listening. One thing about psychiatry is you have to really be comfortable with silence, because silence can be daunting. And that was something that, especially if you're the fly on the wall as a medical student, the attending will be talking to the patient, and there'll just be a loud moment of silence. You know when it's so quiet, you're just like, something needs to happen. Mm-hmm. I feel like that probably happens a lot in psychiatric spaces.
I wonder if it's like being a podcast host every hour for like 6 different podcasts.
Every day,
Monday through Friday. And then that's why I can't do this on the weekend, or like I have to be done by 4, because I don't know if I could do that.
Would you ever do a podcast? Because you mentioned you did public speaking. Mm-hmm. This is not that different. It's not public. It's only 3 of us here, but you did some public speaking. Would you ever do something like a podcast?
I don't think I have the ingenuity or the desire to start my own.
That's fair.
Now, one of the things that I thought was funny in my graduation, or whatever graduation is called when you finish fellowship, Dr. Palomino, our program director, said, I think you should do a podcast. Mm. And it's mostly because of, again, my speaking, my cadence, all these things. Mm-hmm. And again, that's reflective of past experiences. However, I wouldn't be opposed to joining a podcast. I wouldn't be opposed to going on to a show. I just don't feel that I am in a creative space to, on a weekly or on a scheduled basis, do that.
So you mean like be a co-host?
Yeah, I could be a co-host or a guest co-host or one of those things.
Or a guest host?
Or a guest host. Oh. I think that would be fun. But like, in medicine, there's not that many podcasts that we were very aware of, and it's very difficult for our podcast to find a huge audience where people like. Like the one that I always think about was, I can't even think about it right now, the one in that does internal medicine, the Curbsiders. They're huge.
Right.
I don't think they have consistent hosts. I think they have a number of hosts that come in whenever they have time and then do a great show. So like something like that, if they invited me, sure, I'll do it. If I have an expertise or if I have the ability to talk about it, I'm more than happy to do it. Mm. But for now, it's like, I don't know. I would say in my career right now, I would more likely do that than a lot of other things.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. Is there some creative juices in you though? Otherwise?
I would say at this very moment, I think my biggest concerns in life are, one, pending relocation, and 2, starting my family. So I think a lot of my creative juices are more so trying to establish a new home, to build that home, and then build my next practice. I will say in a couple of years, maybe 3 to 4, if that does come to be, I would very likely consider that, and I'd be more than happy to.
What is the bottleneck or the rate limiting step as to where you would go next? Is there a geography you have in mind? You mentioned you want to be close to home and close to family. Mm-hmm. In this context, is family just obviously you and your wife, or is it family, mom, dad, brothers, or sister? I guess I didn't ask you. You're the youngest of 3, you said.
Yeah, I have 2 older sisters, and they all live in the same general geographic area. So they all live in New York, Queens, Long Island. Gotcha. And it's the biggest reason is my parents are getting older. They're both above 70 now. Mm. My father just had like 2 to 3 stents placed.
Oh, wow.
So it's, to me, I know like I don't have that much more time. I have a good amount of time, but not decades.
Right,
I will
right.
have likely a decade,
Right.
or maybe two if I'm lucky.
Right.
But like, to me, I can't deprive like my kids of their grandparents. I don't want to deprive my kids of their aunts, uncles, and cousins.
Right.
So at that point, it would be a good time to just go back there, have support, and just be in a place where I can support them and they can support me.
I always ask, especially anyone that's a parent on the podcast, about parenting tactics, especially if they're in medicine. In this case, how you came to medicine, I feel like, is atypical, right? So like it was through a personal experience that you're like, I might like this. If one of your children, when you do have kids, is interested in medicine, would you encourage them to do it? Or maybe that's probably not the best way to ask it, because you wouldn't. Would you dissuade them from doing it? That's probably.
I would not dissuade anyone of doing anything that they want. I feel like that's unless it's something like completely egregious, like I want to murder an animal. Like, no, don't do that. If you want to go hunting to kill the animal and eat it and respect the body, sure.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like, as long if they choose to say I want to do medicine, would you support me? I'm like, sure. As much support as you want, I will give it to you.
Would you, if you were to lose everything? So today, someone was to say, "All right, look, your degree from medical school meant nothing. Your internal medicine degree meant nothing. Your fellowship degree meant nothing." Mm-hmm. Would you do it all over again today?
Would I still have all the knowledge I have right now?
Let's say yes and no. If the answer is yes, you have all the knowledge. Would you do it all over again?
Oh yeah, it'll be easy. I could totally do it again.
It will still be the same time though.
Yeah.
Oh, so if you didn't have all the knowledge, so you wouldn't start over today then, if you didn't have all the knowledge.
If I had to start over completely fresh at my current age, I don't think I have the ability or time to do it. However, let's just say if I was someone from another country who achieved this level of experience and went to another country to relearn, I would probably consider doing it again, because I know that I have a very unique set of skills and I have a good amount of experience that I'm very confident in what I can do.
Yeah, you'd have to have tremendous foresight and patience, right? Because you know the end of the road already, and you know the road pretty well.
Yeah. Like if I had to go back to do intern year and I had to write 10 notes, I'm like, that's not hard. Like newsflash to interns, you do that again as an attending. It's not different.
Yeah, it doesn't change. You just get better at it.
Yeah.
It's just more experience. I mean, medicine is just experience. The difference between a PGY, 10 and a PGY, 2 is the 8 years between. It's just more and more experience. Where is Dr. Norman Lee? Where are you now? I guess we didn't even talk about that specifically.
Oh, yeah. Best way to put it, I am an assistant professor at Tulane University, section of pulmonary diseases, critical care medicine, and environmental medicine. I'm working in various hospitals, primarily work in the ICU initially at East Jefferson General Hospital, now East Jefferson in conjunction with Tulane. I'm still working in the ICU at University Medical Center, and I do pulmonary consults at East Jefferson and Lakeview Regional Medical Center.
Lakeview as well?
Lakeview as well.
I thought Lakeview was mostly kids, women.
That's Lakeside.
Lakeside.
Yeah, Lakeview is actually in Covington.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you guys are going all over the place.
We are straddling the Causeway Bridge.
Are you more academically inclined or private inclined? You seem academically inclined.
I would like to think, to some degree, if I were to put myself in one of the academic baskets, I would like to be a clinician educator. Less so on the research part, but more so on the ability to educate future clinicians. I've unfortunately have geared my life towards that direction. Did achieve fear, primarily did enjoy teaching, but at this juncture, I don't know if that technically coincides with everything else that I want in my life. So I think that may be something that may take a pause for a bit, but if the opportunity arises where I can go back to it, that's something that I'm thinking about.
You're talking about academia.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And still educating, teaching future trainees and all that. right now I'm happy to just take some time, build up my life a little bit, build up my family. And then if things are in a good spot, then I can go back to that.
What would you change about medical training?
What would I change about medical training?
Perhaps in general, and then from your own personal experience.
I think the best way I could describe myself is not a complainer. I just do what I'm told, for better or worse. For most of it's worse. So I guess if I could change medical training is to make sure that that is not the norm and you shouldn't be that way.
That you're not, you don't do what you're told?
You're not a complete yes person. And I think that to some degree I've trained in a way that I was a complete yes person, irrespective of certain values and thoughts and maybe my own opinion at times. That's just me, but I do feel like this current generation of physicians is a lot better than that. They are willing to set boundaries. They are willing to set these things. And I think there is a delicate interplay between training, the commitment to the work, but also maintaining one sense of self. And I don't know where the exact medium is. And I know the pendulum swings and shifts in various directions. Before we were in one way to not for the resident. And sometimes maybe we are to for them right now. We just need to go back to that happy medium where we have good training. We can confidently say we are producing good physicians, but also giving them a quality life that they would enjoy.
It's definitely something that's come up throughout the entirety of our training, really, right? So, back in my day kind of thing. I don't know. I agree. I don't know where that happy medium is. Because, like I said, a lot of medicine is experience. You just have to be there. You have to see it. You have to do the things to get better at it. I have an attending that said that you should leave. By the time you leave your training, you shouldn't see something that you never saw before, which of course is impossible. But the idea being that you have to be present for that. I understand it because what we do is a tremendous ask on the part of ourselves and on the demand of our patients. Like, our patients demand us to be the best versions of ourselves, right? Whether it be academically or even personally. I strongly believe that you should try to present your best self for your patients, right? And that requires you to be your best self for yourself, right? So finding that happy medium is going to be something that medical training has to kind of come to grips with. There's a lot of talk about physician burnout now, and I'm not sure. I don't even think that was a thing I heard about in medical school when I was in medical school, but it's becoming a thing. Physician burnout and the rates of physician burnout. I'm sure it just applies to other people in medicine, so provider burnout. What's your take on physician burnout and how we can mitigate that in training and, of course, in practice?
I first would like to say physician burnout's a thing.
It's a thing.
I acknowledge its existence. I acknowledge that it is something that we are currently understanding is an entity that I feel that, unfortunately, every other profession already knew existed.
Right.
And then we are now saying that it's
up.
okay that it exists. I think the answer to solve this, there's two ways I see it. The answer that I feel like we are currently going is building resilience, which is impossible.
You can't be burnt out if you can overcome.
Yeah, everyone's cup is different.
Yeah.
Like some people have bigger cups, some people have smaller cups. Not everyone is going to get filled the same way. So I don't think we should have everyone learn on how to build their cup size. I think the best way is to make sure and educate people how much of the cup they can fill and when they can go back for seconds. That's the way I see it. And that's the best way I could put it. instead of teaching, then you need to build a bigger cup. It's how do I empty my cup quicker enough that I'm happy and I can go back for seconds.
Right. I like that.
Yeah. Shout out to Bruce Lee.
Did he say that?
He said something similar about, especially about water.
Yeah,
And
be like water.
Be like water. And that's kind of how I thought about it. Is one, you need to be like water, but two, you have to understand what you're feeling. And if you can't overfill it, you have to understand at what point can you say stop and then go in the opposite way. But no one really cares about being water. Everyone cares about being a cup.
Right. I like that. Be like water. Yeah. So we should strive to be more water and less the holder, less the container.
I think so. I think that's the best way to put it. Because again, we are a service. We can only give so much, and we can overgive or we can not give enough. And that's something that I need to learn myself, is how to turn off. I don't think I can turn off. I personally have a very poor time turning off.
I think part of the issue too is because of the culture, is that we also don't recognize that in others. We don't recognize that others' cups are bigger and or smaller. It's to expect someone to handle things the way you handle things, or the way you can handle things, or the way you have handled things, might not be the fairest way of assessing these kind of situations. But going back to the cup analogy, to think that we all have the same size cup, I think I really like that, because now I'm thinking about how the way we talk to each other in medicine, right? So just do it, be the yes man, right? I think if we were a little bit more empathetic, because we're not an empathetic bunch, doctors, to each other. I mean, we're not an empathetic bunch to each other. We just expect our colleagues to, do what they're supposed to do, and we don't really think about the burdens that they're carrying on a day-to-day basis. And it's interesting you said every other field, every other profession got this down pat, and we're just figuring this out. Yeah.
In the end, I feel like at a certain point, we felt like we were above it. We were immune to this, and we're not. It's, to some people, it's a calling, but in the end, callings are still jobs.
Right.
And as much as you enjoy your job, you can always enjoy something until you can't enjoy it.
Right.
I will enjoy ice cream. I love ice cream, but at one point I can't eat ice cream anymore as much as I like it.
How do you feel about the people that do feel like medicine? Do you feel like medicine is a calling for you? Is it a calling? Is it the deepest of passions? I don't feel like that's the case for everyone, and that's okay. Do you feel that way about yourself?
I don't know if I would call it a calling, but I do feel it's a privilege that I can do this, because it's a privilege to have someone put their life in your hands at their most vulnerable state. I feel like to some that is a calling. I just feel that for me, it's something I respect out of the person, out of the patient. And I respect that I am in a unique position to help them as much as possible.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts?
Overall, honestly, I think in my journey of everything right now, I am now learning the size of my cup, and I'm now determining ways to empty said cup and determine the rate of which that cup can be refilled. So I don't know if it's something that can be taught, but it's something that everyone else is just going to have to find out on their own and see what ways that work for them. And that can change over time, but it's something that it's to be cognizant of.
Yeah.
And if I can impart any knowledge of that, is just understand that everyone's cup is different.
Beautiful. Well said. Thank you, Dr. Lee.
Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Friend of the show. Maybe you can come and be a guest host sometime, whenever you have some time.
Well, if you need one, just set up another mic.
Yeah, man. Thank you. That's the show.
All right. Thank you.
What do you think?
That's cool.
All right. Yeah, not too bad. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of The Last Zebra. We have new episodes coming out every Monday morning on all of your podcast platforms and on Tuesday mornings on YouTube. As always, please don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share. And we are looking forward to seeing you guys on the next one.